And Alexander, it was Freedom Day overnight our time. A lot of celebrations by all. Is most people in the UK embracing this newfound vaccine-based freedom?
Well, they are cautious, is I think what I'd say. There's only been one day of it. There weren't the crowds around that you might have expected before the COVID crisis erupted. But yeah, I mean, people are obviously pleased that the restrictions have been lifted. Something like 70% of the adult population has now had a double vaccination. So there's a feeling amongst people that they're reasonably secure. The rising number of COVID cases, there are two things to say about them. One is that they are substantially amongst younger people. And secondly, the number of people going to hospitals and dying with COVID-related, from COVID-related causes, those numbers are still very flat. There hasn't been much of a spike in those. So I think people feel on balance it's the right thing to do. I mean, you can't eliminate COVID, so you have to find some solution for living with it.
Yeah, that's the point. You've got to manage the risks here. As you say, high levels of younger people, higher proportions of younger people getting infected, and we're told by experts here that's because the older people are largely vaccinated. Now, are younger people still getting vaccinated, though, in the UK? Are people under 40 lining up for AstraZeneca?
Yes, well, AstraZeneca and Pfizer, and particularly those two. Yes, they are lining up for them, but, I mean, not in the numbers that I think the government had hoped, because younger people feel that if they contract COVID, it's not going to be a threat to their lives. They might be ill for a few days, but, 30% of people who test positive are actually asymptomatic, so they don't even know until they've done the test that anything's wrong with them. And for the rest, if they're younger people, they could end up in hospital, but it's very unlikely that will happen. I mean, and people in the end are in the UK learning to manage risk. I mean, you can't keep the economy shut forever. Otherwise, you won't have any money to pay all those subsidies to businesses to keep people's jobs. You won't have a health service because you won't be able to afford it. So, everybody understands that it's a compromise, and common sense will have to prevail.
Yeah, it certainly is a compromise. Obviously, people are going to get ill, people are going to die. As you say, you can't eliminate the virus, but is there a political divide over this, or just nitpicking amongst the various parties?
So there is more nitpicking than a fundamental divide. So there are arguments about whether people should still be made to wear masks on public transport and in enclosed spaces. But generally speaking, over the last 18 months, the Labor Party, the sort of left of politics, have been much more in favour of lockdowns than the right. And the explanation for that seems to be that a lot of supporters of the left come from the public sector, universities, school teachers and so on, who are able to work, apart from the school teachers, able to work from home. Whereas people who run small businesses and work in small businesses, who are more likely to be conservative voters, they're shut out of their jobs and they can't work from home. So it's a vote of suffering, I think, more than anything else.
Now, just a question without notice on something completely different, but Prince Harry is writing an intimate and heartfelt memoir, apparently. Has he done enough to warrant a memoir?
I think he's done more than enough to lead us to ignore him, really. I mean, going around and attacking your own family, your parents, and I mean, enough is enough.
Indeed. Thanks so much for joining us, Alexander. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Chris.